Okay, so today we're going to do a heads-up display for in-game. So last week we set up a main menu, which functions to varying degrees. So this week, if we open up the third-person example map, the one that loads whenever you press start game, we're going to create a new widget. So user interfaces, user interface, widget blueprint, and this will be HUD. Right. Oh, also, we need to make sure that we set up our project settings to load the correct map when the player plays their game. So we went into settings, project settings, and maps and modes. Make sure that we set the editor startup map to main menu and game default map to main menu. A lot of students kind of get to the assessment point and like, I've lost all my levels, it's not loading the right one, it's just loading the template. The probability is you've just not set the correct one to load by default. So I'm just going to save the level. Done. Right. So I made a new user interface called called HUD, and within this one, we just need to quickly design a layout. So if we say canvas panel, this is going to be. We'll name this one normal HUD. So this would be the one that the player sees most of the time. We'll click it as variable so it's visible all the time. We'll just quickly drag it out so it covers. I shouldn't have dragged it out, that's bad practice. 1920, 1080. There we go. Right. Normal HUD. Within this one we might have a mini map. 300. I'll put that in the bottom right corner. Beautiful. That's minimap. So I'm just renaming it quick. Minimap. We might have health. So rather than using canvas panels for this little bit, we're going to use a new tool. So horizontal box. The horizontal box is a really handy tool for setting up columns. Columns? Yeah, columns. So we say, right, well in this bottom corner, if I was to drag out text for the sake of demonstrating, and I set it to fill, it's going to automatically fill or stretch the asset to fit its parent objects, in this case the horizontal box. If I drag out another text onto this, it's automatically going to break and set it to fill. It's going to automatically portion out the horizontal box, creating columns for me. So in this case I only need 2 columns. I'm going to delete these and replace them with vertical boxes, because I want to be able to. I'm just dragging this onto the horizontal box, so it's a child of the vertical, of the horizontal, sorry. So vertical is a child of horizontal. I'm going to set it to fill, and I just copy and paste that. So I've got 2 vertical boxes. So this will be the static text column, and this will be dynamic text column. And by that I just mean on the left I'll have kind of the titles of the information, such as health, fuel, special abilities, wave number, etc. Whereas the children of the, and on the right hand side will be the actual changing values of what the health is, what the maximum is, maybe a progress bar. So if we get this rolling, so I'm going to drag this out into the static text column. So I'm going to drag out 2 different ones. So the first one will be called health. The second one will be called fuel, because we're doing a racing game. And I need to make sure I set them to fill. So I want them to have equal spaces. And then on the right, on the dynamic text, I'm going to drag out some more text. There we go. I'm going to set these to fill. And fill. So for now, I'm going to set their values to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. There we go. Okay. And before I move on, I'm going to drag out a progress bar, which I'm going to just place behind all of this. And by default, I don't want it to be so tall. I need a break between information. Yeah. Just quickly paste that there. Get this one over fuel. So by default, this is overlapping the other information, but if we change the Z order to be a minus number, it's going to place the assets behind everything that's on 0. Right. So now what we're going to have is we're going to have the health. This information will remain static. I'll put a colon on there. Health. Whoop. And the information will update over here. So we've got a numerical output as well as a progress bar, which we can change the percent of here. So it will fill up and give a kind of visual feedback of what's going on in the numerical field. All right. So right, getting this functioning. Compile and save. So just like with the main menu, we need to quickly do the level blueprint. So begin play. We need to tell the level to actually spawn this asset to the screen. Every level should be spawning its own heads-up display. So event begin play, create widget. There we go. We're telling it to spawn the HUD this time. The only players get player controller. So we're telling it whoever's playing this game is the one that we want to create a HUD widget for. Return value gets dragged out. Add to viewport of that player. There we go. And in this case, do we need the cursor to be visible? Maybe. For now we don't, but if we used to do set show cursor, we'll leave it out for now. We could set up cursor visibility and we could assign a custom cursor to the player's mouse to give a theming relevant to the game. So if we quickly press play, right, it will spawn to the screen. Beautiful. Design is horrible, but it's functional. Let's add some functionality. Actually, I don't need that window. I'm going to set the character and edit third person character in the outliner. So in order for the health and fuel to actually work, we need to assign health and fuel to the character. So we're going to click on add variable, and this will be called player health. And on the left, we're going to click on this little red pip and change it to a float. So a float is a numerical variable, and it allows decimal places. And because of the way the progress bar works is a vector of 0 to 1, I'm going to use a float value that operates between the same 0 to 1 range to avoid having to do mathematical kind of equations on divisions and converting to percentages. So under the default value, when I've created this variable, I can't change the value yet. So if I press compile, it spawns the box. So the player's default health will be 1, so that's 100%. We'll add a new variable called player fuel. We'll compile again, set that to 1. Okay, so for the sake of testing and making sure our interface is actually updating, we're going to add some key bindings to make sure that we can change values to see if it's updating the interface. So if we typed in 1 key, so we've got keyboard events here, we're going to do on pressed. We want it to before I do that, I'm going to do all the events. So 2 key, 3 key, and 4 key. So keys 1 and 2 are going to add and subtract health. 3 and 4 will add and subtract fuel. So when 1 is pressed, because it's the leftmost key, I want it to subtract health. So it's going to set player health to be the current health minus 0.1. So to do that, we need to drag out the player health variable and get it. So we're making a reference to what the current value is in health. We're going to type in minus, so float minus float, and we say, right, we want it to be minus, oh no, we want to be 0.1. So it's a subtract 0.1. Do not type minus 0.1 in this value box, because you're going to be minusing minus 0.1, which becomes add 0.1. So it's a minus node, and in the value box you type in 0.1. And we could drag that straight in, but then we'd introduce a bug to our game where the player can have minus 9 million health, depending on how many times they tap the button. So we're going to drag off straight away and search for a clamp, float, and this is going to allow us to set a minimum and maximum value. So we know that the lowest health we want the player to have is 0, the maximum is 1. So compile and save. I'm going to link that back around to player health. Alright, so if I copy and paste these and bring it down to 3, which is going to be responsible for subtracting fuel, I'm going to drag this out and get. I'm going to link that into the first value. It's a little bit messy, I am sorry. Player fuel set, and we'll link that up to there and pressed to set. So as soon as I press 3, it's going to set the player's fuel to be whatever the current fuel is, minus 0.1, and making sure that the value doesn't go beyond 0 and 1. Right, so that's the minus ones done, and then for pressed, for 2, we're going to set health to be, we're going to want that clamp. Right, I'm going to just quickly reorganize this so we've got space. So 1's done, 3's done, move them out of the way. Okay, so 2 is pressed, 2 is going to add health. So we've got the clamp node, and we want to get the current health. And we type in plus float, feed that into the value, and make sure that we're updating that value to be 0.1. And then we can just copy and paste that down to 4, and here we're going to have set fuel, pressed, link that up, and get current fuel. Okay, so now if I go back to the interface, nothing is working when I'm pressing 1, 2, 3 or 4. The values ain't updating, they're staying exactly as the default values I entered when I created those text boxes, and that's because I've added no code yet to link them up. So if we select the text box for 00000 next to health, we are going to go to the text box itself where we entered the values, and next to it we've got a bind option. So we want to create a binding, and in this we're going to actually set up the code to tell it where to get the information from in real time to update the interface. So we're going to do cast to third person character. If you had your own custom character you've coded movement for, you type in that character's name instead. For object, we're going to do get player character, I believe. And so we're just telling it which character to cast to. So we're saying, right, whoever's playing the game, identify that, and then we're casting to the third person character controlled by that person. And we want to, as third person character, we could now access player health. There we go. So we could access those variables now, but then every time we wanted to set up a variable on this page or in the interface which read from the character, we'd have to do this communicating with the character. So instead, we're going to drag this out, promote it to a variable, and we're going to quickly rename that variable character reference, so char ref. I'm going to link up the output from cast to third person to this, and this will go to return node, and then from char ref, now that we've saved it, in future we can just reference this variable here rather than having to cast to the character. So from char ref, I'm searching for player health, get player health, and because the output of this is a float and the input of this is a string or text, it's going to automatically spawn a translation node to convert the numerical data into information that can be printed to the screen. So if I save that, go back to designer, select the text for fuel, we're going to create a new binding, and now for this one, rather than having to cast, instead we can just drag out character reference, get player fuel, link it up, compile, save. So now when I play my game, we can see the values have already updated, and as I can add and subtract, and it all works perfectly cool. So I just need to get the progress bars to work exactly the same. So because they're behind them, I need to select the progress bars in the outliner or hierarchy. So progress bar 0 is my health one. So I'm going to find percent, or I can drag it up and down to change the field percent. Create a binding, and just like with the last when we did the fuel, I'm going to drag out character reference, get the information, player fuel, and because it's the same information type, we can just plug it straight in, and we'll do the same for the did I just type fuel? Okay, so back in the graph, if you do make that mistake, get %0, I can just double click on it or on any of them, and it will open up the code we did. Let's drag out, that should be get health. There we go. So this one, progress bar 203, create the binding, and this time we do the fuel. Fuel, bang, done, compile and save. So now if I load my game, there we go, so the fuel bars work beautifully. Right, so next, the setting up a mini map. Before I do this, I'm going to quickly import a circle alpha, not alphabet, alpha. No, I want a nice one. That one will do. Desktop alpha circle. Lovely. Right, so I'm going to import that image quickly. We're going to use this shape to customize the minimap's visibility. By default, when we play the game, it's a square, and I can't remember any game I've ever played. Actually, I can. FPSs. I tell a lie. Right. So if we select the character, edit third person. Right, in the viewport mode, so just at the top of the screen, go into viewport, we need to create a new camera. So I'm just searching for camera. With the camera selected, I'm going to make sure that I find auto activate. So I just typed in auto at the very top. I'm going to detick that box because if that is enabled, what's going to happen is it's going to become the character's default view when they're playing the game. And we don't want the character to be looking from the top down. So I've made a camera, quickly rename it minimap, so I can differentiate between the two cameras. And then with it selected, add component, scene capture component 2D. So what this is going to do, it's going to take the information viewed by the camera and it's going to translate it out into a 2D texture that we can render onto the screen. So I'm going to select the camera and I'm going to press E and just rotate the camera around 90 degrees so it's looking straight down. Move it up to a height. You can change this afterwards if you want. It does require a little bit of trial and testing. If I just delete that text quickly. With the scene capture component selected, if we scroll all the way down to scene capture, we need to set the texture target to tell it where to save what it's viewing into a texture. So if we hold down left click, we want to create a new asset called render target, and we'll save that into the same folder as user interface. So minimap texture. Okay, so we can see straight away, it's a little bit hard on this screen maybe, but you can see my character is just floating in blackness there in the infinite void. Underneath, was it? I think it's under scene capture. If I expand it down to show advanced, we can customize the show flags and advanced show flags so that you can actually tell it what assets you want to be visible in the minimap. So for example, you may not necessarily want to show a 3D perspective view of the character moving around the web because it might become a little bit too busy to show in a mini-map. So you might want to kind of simplify it down to logos or kind of abstract shapes. So rather than viewing a character, you'd see a green triangle or a wayfinder of some fashion. So in order to do that, we'd simply detick scalable meshes, which is anything that can be animated and moved around, and we might enable paper 2D sprites as the only thing visible on the minimap. So for every asset we design, we'd create a 2D representation of it that we can put onto the minimap to ensure that it all kind of is readable and functional for a user. But for now, we'll just leave it all on. It doesn't matter too much. So for scene capture, make sure that we set the perspective to orthographic, which is projection type orthographic. So we're telling it we want it to be front on, or front on, side on, or top down with no distortion. We save that. We can close this window. We'll minimize the hard one for now. But we've got our minimap texture there. So what we need to do is select it, right click it, create a material. So minimap texture mat is a default name it will create. Open the material up, and we're going to take the texture output and link it up to emissive color, and deselect everything by just clicking an empty space. And over on the left, on the material domain, if we change it to user interface, what we now have is material which is set up to be rendered out to the widget, but it's still square. We'll come back to fixing that in 2 seconds. If I close this, I'll minimize this for now. I want to open up the HUD. Here it is, designer view. So we'll select the image that we put in here earlier, and we'll click on the image drop down, minimap texture material. Just find it, click. There we go. So we've got it visible. Compile and save. If I launch my game now, we can see the minimap is updating as we go along. It's beautiful, the best in the world. Exit that. But I don't want it to be square. I might want it to be a triangle, to be completely unmeta, or in this case a circle. So if I load up the minimap material, and if I change the blend mode from opaque to masked, I've now got the opacity mask option. I'll drag in my alpha circle, I'll drag that into the opacity mask input, and I'll save it. And now when I play my game, I've got a round minimap instead of a square one. It can be any shape you want, but now if you was trying to design your own interface, you might want to have a dragon inspired kind of dragon wrapping around the interface to make it look really kind of high fantasy-ish, and you just do that by masking out your minimap and then using a image over the top of it. Where is the image? Image. You might drag it out to here, scale it up to make sure it fills it all, and then I change the Z order to be behind it, and I could put whatever image I wanted there and use my more masks to kind of further increase the complexity. But ultimately the interface stuff comes down to really simple, easy to use code with just smart layering and grouping of our assets. Okay.